Power couple, the best way to describe the next set of speakers. The couple provides support to companies around the world through enlightened strategic growth, elevating authentically curious leadership. They also aim in connecting human beings in order to increase profitability, innovation, and productivity. Both speakers are master practitioners in Neuro Linguistic Programming, mindset executive coaches, and lovers of lifelong learning. Now more than ever, their work is needed worldwide and they are excited to be here sharing their message with you. Our next speakers, Dave and Emma Garrison.
Thanks, Ruben. And hello, everybody. We're really delighted to be with you here from self-isolation in beautiful Park City, Utah with our puppies.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're very excited and can't wait to share with you a video that we put together about the 4 secrets for business leaders during coronavirus. We're talking all things how to take care of yourself, your team, how to communicate, how to deal with difficult decisions that may arise. And we are just so excited to be here for the VirtualPreneur Summit of 2020. Ruben, thank you for having us and check it out.
Hi, it's Dave Garrison.
And Emma Garrison here. We're calling in from beautiful Park City, Utah, and what we've learned is, through talking to some of our clients right now, is there's a real need for support in what do we do with our business and how do we really look at it differently and see crisis as more of an opportunity.
You know, it's interesting because in the Chinese language, the same symbol that is crisis is also opportunity. And the mindset you use to look at the situation will determine how you see the world and how you create opportunities for strategic growth, which is what we're all about. And some of you might be saying, hey, you're crazy to talk about strategic growth in a time when we're worried about staying afloat. And part of that is the fear factor. So let's talk about how humans process fear.
So fear, you may be wondering, like, why we even need to talk about this right now when we're working with business. Like, we're just trying to keep afloat. But here's the thing. Fear releases specific hormones related to stress, like cortisol, that create less resourcefulness in your brain. You don't have the same access to all parts of your brain when you're experiencing fear, anxiety, uncertainty. So this is important to talk about for a couple of reasons. One, we want to address it with our teams. We want to help decrease fear and increase certainty in order to allow them to be more innovative, more problem solving, more creative in the stuff that they're creating right now. We'll talk about some companies that are really pivoting effectively. Another thing we'll talk about is pivoting and the power of that. But the thing is, our brains are wired to protect us. That's their number one job, is for survival and safety. And with that being said, our brains right now are trying to seek out all of this information, which ultimately is generating more fear and anxiety. And while it's beneficial to be informed, currently we're seeing a lot of over-informing, and that's creating more anxiety and fear in the space. So not only are you competing with communicating with your teams with their families and other resources, but they're also taking in so much media that it's likely they're only taking in part of what you're actually sharing with them. So our number one thing here is to decrease fear and anxiety. It's the same thought as if I told you to look around the room and see all of the things that are blue. And then you'll look around, you'll see all the things that are blue, and then if I said to you, what was yellow? You might not be able to remember what was yellow because you were focused on the blue. Our brains are going to go and find any and all evidence to support whatever it's thinking right now. So if our employees are consuming all of this media that's generating fear and anxiety, they're much less likely to see the opportunity in the crisis. They're less likely to be more creative, problem-solving, innovative, all the things that will really be beneficial for our business. The same way that if you were trying to make a decision and you had 2 options, I don't know about you guys, but have you ever had 2 decisions and you could convince yourself into either one? That's because when we start down one path, our brain will find all of the reasons to do it, to be concerned, to think about it, and vice versa. So what we want to do is start allowing our teams to see the yellow in the room, to see the whole rainbow, more than just the fear. There's plenty of that. We don't need to keep injecting that into them. Let's shift the gears a little bit and talk about what it means to really create certainty for our teams, specifically around strategic growth, values, vision, communication, all of the things. We're going to dive into it right now.
So, fear keeps you from seeing opportunity. And this is a time where we're seeing more opportunity than we've ever seen before. And we'll talk about that in a second, but as Emma was pointing out the fear factor, I was reminded of jet training in American Airlines. When I got trained as a pilot there, the first thing they told you to do when you lose an engine, which is sort of a nerve-wracking moment, is to say, oh, crap. Because if you just start reaching for things and pulling things, you're likely to do the wrong thing because you don't have all your resources. So what two lessons and takeaways for leaders? One is, if you feel, oh crap, and I got to do something right now, pause. Pause, do the pause. The second thing is, if you're meeting with your leadership team and everybody agrees this is what we ought to do, that's the time to ask, what would opposing viewpoints be? What else should we be considering? So here's what we've learned about best practices among leaders in this unusual time. And we're going to break it down into a couple of things. One is the strategic growth mindset in today's environment. Two is finding opportunities. Three is leading remote team members. And four is reducing overhead. So those are the four topics we're going to address. Let's start with strategic growth mindset. What we'd encourage leaders to do is to not lose sight and to put up on a whiteboard while they have decision making or while they're communicating with employees, put up on a whiteboard your vision and your values and your strategy and use those as anchors. Because although the world may look very different coming out of the current crisis, we're still going to have an organization and we're still going to be anchored in our values and our vision and our strategies. We'll obviously adopt the objectives for the current situation, but let's stay anchored there and let's remind employees.
And there's a couple of reasons to do that. First and foremost is it drives certainty and stability for our customers and our employees. So we're looking to create a more solid foundation that they're standing on right now and honing in on the things that we've really focused and spent a lot of time developing before will really help support that. The other component of this is the idea that this is what vision, values, and strategy are created for. Like, there are so few times in our world that a crisis like this or opportunity like this is happening. And what better time to implement the tools that you've set yourself up with than right now to put them into play. This is a time when distractions and fear and all the things of burning out fires is top of mind, and the real strategic move here and the competitive advantage is going to be to hone in, focus on the things that create stability and certainty in your team. It's a psychological game.
The media is fighting for your attention as a leader, and their message is everything is different, nothing is the same. As a leader, values and vision and strategy is your chance to say, wait a minute, there are some things the same. And that's reassuring to people, even with all the uncertainty and all the change.
And again, this idea of developing the certainty will help increase resourcefulness in your employees' brains to help create innovative solutions and different thought patterns. And we'll talk about some businesses that are really thriving with that.
Let's turn to that, because finding opportunities means you're doing a pivot as a team. Finding opportunities means you're doing a pivot and you have a resourceful state of mind. Here are some examples. In the town in China where this disease first originated, where the virus first was found, there's a department store that had to close by government order all of their locations. They had 100 cosmetic sales clerks and they wondered, what do we do with these people? They assigned them to customers and asked them to call the customers, household to household, and offer consultation on cosmetics. By doing so, they increased their business by 200%, even though their store was closed. Another company in China is an international distributor, and they were not distributing anything to do with this crisis. They were distributing other kinds of products, but they recognized the need for masks and gloves in the US. So now their business is booming as they're distributing masks and gloves. In Detroit, General Motors is looking at how do we make respirators using our factories, which are temporarily closed. And other distilleries are looking at how do we do hand lotion. And even a company that makes scrunchies with our factory in Vietnam has repurposed the material to make face masks, decorator face masks and gloves so people don't touch their face. That's pivoting, that's being resourceful. There are lots of businesses that are open and growing even in states that are closed, like New York and California. And if you want to know what kinds of businesses are growing, go to the CISA.gov website, CISA, and they'll list the critical infrastructure areas. Chemical companies are open and rocking. Companies that Supply paper goods are open and rocking. Obviously, pharmacies, companies who are suppliers to pharmacies, labeling companies, lots of companies are seeing peak demand right now. So find the opportunity for your company. Do that by writing up on the whiteboard, here is what we are uniquely good at. Here are our competencies, and here's where we have competitive advantages. And ask yourself, how can we reapply those competitive advantages in this time to be real about what's going on and create revenue?
And for those of you who have worked with us in the past, you know the method called the Ox method, weighing the ox, really tapping in to all of your employees, all of your top leaders' insights during this time, getting them to really bring all brains to the table to come up with the best solution, the best thinking for us collectively. If you want more information on that, shoot us a direct message. We'll be happy to share.
The third area we wanted to talk about is how to manage remote teams. Although a lot of companies have had remote workers for a long time, for some, it's brand new. And it's not only the company being prepared, which is things like bandwidth and number of ports to access remotely, and how your telephone switch is set up to route calls to people at their homes on their cell phones. It's not only the company infrastructure, it is also the employee infrastructure. Do I have a quiet place to work? How are my kids going to be cared for? Who's going to take care of pets? And those are issues that are critical business issues for you to acknowledge and to honor and to have discussions with your employees about. The other thing that we'd point out is a remote workforce can sometimes be a very lonely endeavor, and people don't feel the sense of teamwork and loyalty and connectivity. We'd encourage each manager to call out for a half-hour call every single week to every employee who is remote and ask two important questions. The first one is, how are you? So when you ask how are you, what you're trying to find out is how are they as a human being, not a human doing. Because if we can't get past the human being, if we can't acknowledge and embrace the human being, it's very hard for a person to be fully on board and to execute and be creative and be innovative.
The other side of that too is remembering a lot of the people who are now going to be working at home, like Dave said, they have children, they have a bunch of other fires that they're working on putting out. And so being their saving grace in a sense of being a space to speak their truth, to speak their fears, holding the container. We don't need to solve anything. We just get to be a space for them to speak their concerns, their frustrations, whatever it might be. And the master pivot here is remembering that when you can create that deep connection with your team, work might become their saving grace as far as an escape during this time where we're feeling isolated. It's a chance to connect with your peers. It's a chance to escape from your family if you need to do that. It's a chance to feel like you have a purpose even when you're locked up inside. So remember that this is also a competitive advantage. It is connecting with human beings, and we believe that is a crucial thing to be doing right now. It's also going to drive loyalty, retention. When all of this is said and done, your people are going to feel like, wow, they really took care of me. I'm going to stand by them.
And this is true even if those people later face rifts. If they face being laid off, they'll remember you can do it in a compassionate way. As a leader, oftentimes we want to make things better and we want to solve things. So if you say to somebody, how are you? And they say, I'm really suffering, don't give them a pep talk. Don't tell them everything's okay. All you have to do is validate what they're experiencing and say, I hear you and I understand. Is there anything I can do to support you? The second question to ask at the beginning of every half-hour conversation or your team meetings are, what are the causes for celebrations? Because again, we're being bombarded by all this bad news and all this uncertainty. It's your opportunity to step up and lead. The question is, what are your causes for celebrations? It's not the company announcing birthdays or anniversaries. This is the individual's cause for celebration, which could be about their personal life, it could be about their work life, it doesn't matter. You're asking people to anchor in, not everything is bleak here.
And we often hear some pushback with recognition. This is your job, this is what I'm paying you for. And okay, but during this time, we believe during all times recognition and celebrations are really, really important, and statistics show that as far as engagement goes. But really what we want to hone in on is creating a cause of gratitude. and remembering, oh my gosh, I can be thankful and certain that Joe from tech set me up virtually on my computer with Zoom and taught me how to use it. It doesn't need to be groundbreaking like, thank you for driving sales in this organization. It can simply be, thank you for collaborating with me on this. I was feeling alone and it supported our value of collaboration and helping each other. So really always tying these back to values will be super beneficial. Again, through line of certainty and creating that stability and knowingness of there are some things that are still the same as they were before. So we want to just beat that into their bones that things are still somewhat okay and normal here, and allow work to be that space for them.
And what's normal is our relationship with each other and our commitment to our values as a company. The other thing is, if you've been holding monthly departmental meetings, step it up to weekly. If you've been doing weekly sales meetings, step it up to daily, even if it's only a 15-minute meeting, because you need to get critical feedback. We need to be asking, what are our customers saying? What are our suppliers telling us? That's the data we need to make the leadership pivot. So third theme is managing remote workforce and encouraging people, celebrating, and checking in on how people are doing. The fourth theme we want to talk about today is reducing overhead. We've heard from lots of our clients that they need to pay attention right now to overhead and reduce it. And the first inclination is to go to payroll because it's often our largest expense. And so they go to, okay, we need to start cutting heads. We'd say, remember the training from American Airlines. Say, holy crap, and stop. Overhead is a lot more than people. Let's take a page from CHG Healthcare's playbook in the 08-09 global financial crisis. CHG pivoted and put people first. Instead of the executive sitting in a room and deciding who would be fired or what percentage of payroll to reduce, the first thing they did is went to every employee and said, we'd like your ideas on how to reduce our expenses so that we can minimize the number of people that we're going to have to lay off because we're facing a 35 or 40% decline in revenue. We know there will be layoffs. They were very real, and they invited people in. They invited people in to be part of the solution, including people who are going to be laid off. But that plays a human psychology role that's really important to say, if you're an employee being asked, you're not a victim, you're not being done to, you're part of the solution. And they implemented about 1,000 of the ideas they got that helped them reduce the number of layoffs. So the first question is, the first statement is to ask your team for their input on what we can do differently. You might be surprised at what you'd learn from the people who actually do the work. Then the second step is, when it comes to payroll, it's not a black and white, we need to reduce the number of full-time employees or we need to eliminate part-time employees. It's not that black and white. There's lots of optionality that we're hearing from clients, some really creative solutions. For example, instead of laying people off, say we need to reduce the number of days a week you work and your pay will be reduced. You know, in Arizona, we were talking to a client, the unemployment payment is about $1,000 a month. For most of your employees, if you had to reduce them to 3 days a week instead of 5, you'd find they're still making more than they would get with unemployment. So you're actually caring for employees while retaining all the knowledge and experience that they've built in, all the relationships, because those relationships are really expensive to replace. Relationships with suppliers, with customers, with people in other departments.
The other component of that piece as well is supporting your employees, supporting their families. There's a lot going on at home, like we talked about. We're human beings, not human doings. And for so long in our world, we've focused on the doings. You're the finance person, the HR person, the sales person, as opposed to, hey, I've got 5 kids at home and I've got to figure out groceries and school and all the things now that they're home. So remembering this is a way to really take care of your people. It's a win-win on both sides.
And you know, the other thing here is to consider other options. For example, everybody in the company, at a company we talked to yesterday, everybody in the company, everybody took a 10% pay cut as a preventive measure. And the CEO said, I expect you to do 10% less. And I'd like you to use that time to spend with your family. If that's not speaking to the values and reducing expenses in a creative and honorable way, I don't know what is. Another approach that we've heard is to ask people in this remote workforce environment, it's not reducing expenses, but ask people not to come to work and just select one person from a department to be at the office and make sure they're at least 6 feet from other people. And that is usually somebody in the IT department. If another option we heard before you go to reductions in force is ask who would like to have a voluntary vacation? Who would like to have an unpaid leave? Hey, we'll give you a week off. You have no idea. There may be people out there whose kids are home from school and they want to connect with their family and ground, and they'll give up a week of pay to do it. It's the last resort to say, we're going to lay people off. And if you need to lay people off, be very thoughtful and humane about how you do it. Do it with honor and give them the support they need so they can quickly get unemployment, to help them with references, to help them with resumes. It's a hard position for everybody, but the way you handle those who leave will determine how those who stay feel about the company.
And there are two other things here that we want to touch on as well, which is effective communication during this time. Like Dave referenced earlier, we're competing for their attention, because any article that you see that says COVID-19, boom, that's where they're headed, because we're in a fear-based mentality right now. Our brain is trying to seek resources to help keep us safe. And what we know is that doesn't actually keep us safe to have over information, because that drives the hormones and all of the things. So what we want to do is over communicate as much as possible. If you feel like you've already over communicated, do it 10 more times until you hear somebody say, we get it, right? Because again, we're competing for their attention. One of the ways that we've seen this handled is having a virtual open door meeting. 30 minutes every morning. We've seen a CEO host those, which is really supportive for the team to ask questions, anything ranging from what does this mean for us down the line to what are we doing during this time to keep our employees safe. And sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I really don't know right now. We know that there's a lot of fear and anxiety for CEOs as well during this time, and what we'd encourage you to do is stay as transparent and open with your teams as possible. This is a really beautiful way to do so. The team will feel more connected to you, again, driving loyalty and retention. They'll also feel safer because they feel like you're providing them with the information that you have. And the connection is key. So we really believe that the communication component is really vital. The other thing that I want to remind too is the power of the pivot, and really honing in on what does it look like for us to pivot, and how can we get all hands on deck, all brains on deck to get the best solution possible for us that meets our criteria, that aligns with vision, values, and maybe our strategy needs to shift a little bit or a lot of it. But the purpose of this is to really understand, oh my gosh, if I want a competitive advantage here, this will be the difference between the companies that survive and the companies that do not. How do I really set myself up to pivot the things that I need to pivot to both take care of me, my team, and our customers, right? We want to keep that customer loyalty, really take care of them. We've seen companies postponing payments for their clients and still supporting services. We've seen all types of creative ways to increase that customer support and care, and really moving in a way that supports all people involved.
So leadership pivot is one of the ideas we'd like to leave you with in concluding thoughts. The second is there are more opportunities being created today than there have ever been in any point in history for businesses. The reason I can say that with confidence is things have never changed so quickly in our lifetime, and every change creates opportunity. The question for you is, what opportunities it create for you, and how can you take advantage of that and pivot your organization based on what it is you do really well to apply it to the current situation. So the situation's been unfrozen. The rules are being rewritten. The changes we've seen so far are the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a very different environment 30 days from now. How can you keep your antenna up, keep the information flowing back to you from all sources in your company, from your customers, in order to identify where those pivots might be and how you might react? And the third idea we'd leave you with, our stories determine what we see. If we say this is the end of the world for my company, we're probably going to fail, the truth is all you will see is what supports that story. And if you say, you know what, this is a challenge for us and it creates new opportunities, I wonder where they are, you'll start to see those new opportunities. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get your ideas on what else you'd like us to cover. We talk to clients every single day. We're hearing lots of great ideas and we're seeing lots of great leadership.
Busier than ever. So if you liked this video, please like it, drop a comment below, let us know what your biggest takeaway was, or like Dave said, any other things that you would like covered. We're going to continue providing resources like this out to the community as a way to give back. It's important to us. It's a part of our company values, and we look forward to continuing connecting with you guys.